The first slap did not land on her face. It landed on the truth. When the glass door of the private lounge swung open, every voice inside died at once. Music cut off mid-note. Forks froze halfway to mouths. Conversations collapsed into stunned silence. And there she was, standing beside her own husband's mother, wearing the same gold wedding band as the woman already seated beside him. For a second, no one breathed. Her husband slowly turned, his smile still resting on his lips from the joke he had been telling. When his eyes met hers, the color drained from his face so fast it was almost frightening, because he knew that the lie he had buried for years had just stood up and called his name without saying a word. She did not scream. She did not cry. She simply looked at him and said, calmly, clearly, and loud enough for everyone to hear, "I'm tired of being the side chick in my own marriage." A chair scraped harshly against the floor. Someone gasped. His mother's hand flew to her chest. The woman sitting beside him, dressed in white lace, smiling just minutes ago, slowly stood up, eyes wide, confusion written all over her face. "What does she mean?" the woman asked. He opened his mouth. No sound came out. And that was when she knew, without any doubt, that everything she had suspected was true. But no one in that room knew the full story yet. They didn't know how deep the betrayal went. They didn't know how carefully planned this moment had been. And they certainly didn't know what was about to happen next. Because this was not a confrontation. It was a reveal, and it had taken her years to survive long enough to pull it off. 5 years earlier, she had walked into her marriage believing she was chosen. Her name was Aaliyah. She met Marcus on a humid summer evening in Atlanta at a small community fundraiser for underprivileged kids. He spoke well, dressed simply, and listened like her words mattered. He asked about her dreams, about her family, about her faith. By the third date, he told her he wanted to marry her. People warned her it was too fast. She ignored them. He told her he worked in logistics and traveled often. She didn't question it. He said he wasn't close to his family. She respected his privacy. When he suggested a small wedding to avoid stress, she agreed. The ceremony was beautiful, intimate, quiet. She became Mrs. Marcus Hill that day, believing she had stepped into partnership, protection, and love. The first year was good. Not perfect, but good. He provided. He called when he traveled. He came home with gifts and stories. He prayed with her sometimes, laughed with her often. But slowly, things began to shift. Phone calls ended abruptly when she entered the room. Trips became longer. Affection became scheduled. When she asked questions, he smiled and said, "You worry too much." When she asked for more time, he said, "You know I'm doing this for us." The second year, she noticed something strange. Bills arrived late. Documents came in names she didn't recognize. Once, while organizing files, she found a lease agreement signed by Marcus with another address. When she asked him about it, his response was calm. "That's an old document. I forgot to shred it." She wanted to believe him. The third year was when the silence became loud. He stopped arguing, stopped explaining, stopped apologizing. Instead, he disappeared emotionally. And then came the day everything cracked open. Aaliyah was visiting her aunt in Chicago when she received a call from an unknown number. At first, she ignored it. Then it rang again and again. Finally, she answered. "Is this Marcus's wife?" A woman asked. Her stomach dropped. "Yes," Aaliyah said carefully. "Who's calling?" There was a pause. "I think we need to talk." The woman's name was Vanessa. She spoke politely, carefully, like someone afraid of being wrong. She said she had been with Marcus for 6 years. 6 years. She said they shared an apartment, that his mother visited them, that his family knew her as his wife. Aaliyah laughed at first. Then she cried. Then she went numb. "You're lying," she said. "I wish I was," Vanessa replied. "But I just found your name on a medical insurance document." The silence between them was heavy. Aaliyah hung up without another word. That night, she didn't sleep. The next morning, she didn't confront Marcus. She waited. She began to watch. And what she discovered shattered her. Marcus had two lives. In one, he was a devoted husband who traveled for work. In the other, he was a settled man with another woman, celebrating holidays, attending family events, and making plans for the future. She wasn't the other woman. She was the hidden one, the side chick, in her own marriage. For weeks, she walked around like a ghost, cooking meals he barely touched, washing clothes he wore somewhere else, smiling at friends who praised her strong marriage. She considered leaving quietly, but something inside her refused, because Marcus didn't just betray her heart. He had used her name to secure loans, used her credit to build a life she didn't live in, used her silence to protect his comfort, and worst of all, he planned to discard her. One evening, she overheard a phone call he didn't know she could hear. "It's almost done," he said. "Once the business deal closes, I'll handle the loose ends." Loose ends. That was her. That night, Aaliyah stopped crying. She stopped begging. She stopped hoping. And she started planning. Over the next year, she quietly gathered evidence, documents, recordings, messages. She spoke to lawyers. She rebuilt her finances. She rebuilt herself. She learned patience. And when she finally heard that Marcus was planning a family celebration to announce his engagement to Vanessa, she knew the time had come. He thought she would never show up. He thought she didn't know. He thought she was still confused. That was his biggest mistake. Now, standing in that silent lounge, every eye fixed on them, Aaliyah met his stare without fear. "Marcus," she said softly, "tell them who I am." His lips trembled. Vanessa turned to him, her voice shaking. "Marcus." His mother looked between them, disbelief written all over her face. "What is going on?" she demanded. Aaliyah took a step forward. "I'm your son's wife," she said. "Legally, spiritually, fully." Vanessa's knees buckled slightly. The room erupted into chaos. But before anyone could say another word, Marcus raised his hand. "Aaliyah," he said quietly, his voice breaking, "please, not here." She smiled. "Oh," she replied, "this is exactly where it belongs." Then she reached into her bag and placed a thick envelope on the table. And that was when everything truly began, because inside that envelope was the proof that would destroy him. And no one in that room was ready for what it contained. If this story already has your attention, take a moment now to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share it with someone who loves powerful real-life stories like this. Where are you watching from today? Drop your city or country in the comments and let us know. And tell us, what would you have done if you discovered you were the side chick in your own marriage? Would you walk away quietly or confront the truth head-on? The envelope sat on the table like a ticking bomb. No one touched it. Marcus stared at it as if it might explode on its own. Vanessa stood frozen, her hands gripping the back of the chair for support. His mother's eyes moved slowly from the envelope to Aaliyah, then back again, her lips trembling. "What is that?" his mother finally asked. Aaliyah did not answer immediately. She slowly pulled out a chair and sat down, calm and steady, like someone who had already lived through the worst part. "That," she said, tapping the envelope lightly, "is the truth you raised your son to hide." Marcus swallowed hard. "Aaliyah, please, we can talk privately." She looked up at him, eyes cold but clear. "You had years to talk privately." The room buzzed with whispers. Phones were already being raised discreetly. This was not supposed to be drama. This was supposed to be an announcement party. Flowers, champagne, congratulations. Instead, it had become a reckoning. Vanessa finally found her voice. "Marcus," she said, tears welling up, "why is she wearing a wedding ring identical to mine?" Aaliyah gently lifted her left hand. "Because it came from the same jeweler, paid for from the same account." Marcus's mother staggered back into her chair. "No," she whispered. "That's not possible." Aaliyah turned to her, her tone respectful but firm. "Ma'am, I met you once, 3 years ago, at a Thanksgiving dinner in Maryland." The older woman's face went pale. "I've never been to Maryland." Aaliyah nodded slowly. "That's what I realized later. The woman I met wasn't you. It was his aunt. He told her to pretend. Marcus slammed his palm on the table. Enough! Every head snapped toward him. I said enough, he shouted. You don't know what you're doing. Aaliyah stood up again, her voice calm. I know exactly what I'm doing. She opened the envelope. One by one, she laid the documents on the table. Marriage certificates, joint account statements, property leases with 2 addresses, loan agreements bearing her signature, signed electronically without her knowledge. Vanessa leaned forward, her hands shaking as she read. You told me you were single when we met, she whispered. Marcus said nothing. You told me your ex-wife left you, Vanessa continued. You said she cheated. Aaliyah let out a bitter laugh. I never left. I was waiting at home while you built another life. The room felt smaller, heavier. Marcus's mother covered her mouth. Marcus, tell me this is not true. He looked at the floor. That silence was louder than any confession. Vanessa took a step back. So, what am I? Aaliyah turned to her, her expression softening for the first time. You are not my enemy. Vanessa's eyes filled with tears. You didn't steal my husband, Aaliyah continued. He divided himself and lied to us both. The room fell quiet again. Marcus finally looked up, anger flashing his eyes. You think you've won? You think humiliating me will fix anything? Aaliyah met his gaze. This isn't humiliation. This is exposure. She picked up the last document and slid it across the table. Vanessa gasped. What is this? She asked. A business registration. Aaliyah replied, the company you think you're co-owning. Marcus lunged forward. Stop. But it was too late. Vanessa read the page, her face draining of color. Why is her name listed as primary beneficiary? Aaliyah folded her arms. Because every business you built was funded with my credit, my risk, my name. Vanessa shook her head. You told me you built everything yourself. Marcus exploded. You went digging behind my back. Yes, Aaliyah said simply, because love without truth is a trap. His mother began to cry softly. You lied to your family, she said. To 2 women, to everyone. Marcus clenched his fists. I did what I had to do. Aaliyah stepped closer to him. No, you did what benefited you. She leaned in, lowering her voice so only he could hear. And I haven't even shown them everything yet. His eyes widened. What do you want? He whispered. Aaliyah straightened and addressed the room. I want the lies to stop, she said. And I want justice to begin. Vanessa looked up. What happens now? Aaliyah turned toward her slowly. Now, the truth finishes what the lies started. She reached into her bag again, and this time she pulled out something that made Marcus stumble backward, because it wasn't papers. It was a court notice, and his name was written all over it. If this story is pulling you in, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share it with someone who loves deep, real-life stories. Where are you watching from right now? Drop it in the comments. And tell us, have you ever seen a lie this big finally come to light? What would you do if you were in her place? The room changed the moment the court notice touched the table. It was no longer a celebration space. It was no longer a family gathering. It became a courtroom without a judge. Marcus stared at the document as if it were written in another language. His lips parted, then closed again. For the first time that night, fear crept into his eyes. Not anger, not annoyance, not embarrassment. Fear. What is this? Vanessa asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Aaliyah didn't rush to answer. She allowed the silence to stretch, to press down on everyone the same way it had pressed down on her for years. It's a formal notice, she said finally, for fraud, identity misuse, and marital deception. Marcus shook his head quickly. You can't do this. I already did, she replied. His mother stood up slowly, gripping the edge of the table to steady herself. Marcus, what have you gotten yourself into? He turned to her, desperation flashing across his face. Mom, you don't understand. She's twisting things. Aaliyah let out a quiet breath. That's funny, because for years, I was the one confused. I was the one questioning my reality. She turned toward his mother respectfully. Ma'am, I want you to know something. I never wanted to disgrace your family. I tried to fix this privately. His mother's eyes filled with tears. Then why all this? Because he planned to erase me, Aaliyah said, her voice steady but heavy. Quietly, legally, financially. Vanessa sank back into her chair. You were going to marry me, she said to Marcus, disbelief shaking her voice. You proposed last month. Marcus opened his mouth, closed it. You told me your divorce was final, Vanessa continued. You showed me papers. Aaliyah nodded. Photoshopped. I checked. Vanessa covered her face, her shoulders shaking. So I was celebrating a future that already existed. Aaliyah walked closer to her, lowering her voice. I know that pain. For a moment, the two women stood on opposite sides of the same truth. Marcus suddenly raised his voice. You're enjoying this. Aaliyah turned sharply. No, I'm surviving it. She reached into her bag again, but this time she didn't pull out documents. She pulled out her phone. Over the last year, she said, addressing the room, I stopped asking to choose honesty. I started collecting it. She tapped the screen. Marcus lunged forward. Don't. Too late. His voice filled the room, clear, unmistakable, recorded. I'll leave her once everything is secure. She won't fight. She never does. Vanessa gasped. His mother staggered back. That's your voice. Another recording played. She doesn't even know about the loans yet. By the time she figures it out, it won't matter. The room erupted. How could you? You used her. You lied to everyone. Marcus shouted over the noise. Turn it off. Aaliyah did. Silence crashed down harder than the shouting ever could. You see, Aaliyah said quietly, I wasn't a side chick because I lacked value. I was a side chick because you needed someone stable to stand on while you chased admiration elsewhere. Vanessa stood up abruptly. So every time you said you were traveling, every holiday you missed. Marcus looked at her. Vanessa, don't, she snapped. Just don't. She turned to Aaliyah. Why didn't you confront me earlier? Aaliyah answered honestly. Because I needed to understand the full picture. And because I didn't know if you knew. Vanessa nodded slowly. I didn't. Marcus's mother stepped between them. Both of you. This is tearing me apart. Aaliyah softened. I'm sorry, but lies tear families apart. Truth just reveals the damage. Marcus's phone buzzed on the table. Aaliyah glanced at it. Then she smiled faintly. That would be my lawyer, she said. They just confirmed the filing went through. Marcus's knees nearly gave out. You filed already? Yes. Vanessa swallowed hard. Filed what? Aaliyah met her eyes. An injunction. The room held its breath. He can't sell, move, or transfer anything tied to my name, Aaliyah continued, including the business, including the properties. Marcus shouted, You're trying to ruin me. Aaliyah stepped closer, lowering her voice. No, you ruined yourself the moment you decided I was disposable. His mother broke down completely, sobbing into her hands. Vanessa backed away, shaking her head. I need air. She walked toward the door, then stopped and turned back. To think, she said bitterly. I used to feel sorry for you. Aaliyah nodded. I felt sorry for myself, too, until I stopped. Vanessa left. The door closed behind her with a final thud. Marcus stood alone now. No fiancé, no audience, no control. Aaliyah picked up her bag. This isn't the end, Marcus said quietly. You don't know what you've started. Aaliyah looked at him one last time. I know exactly what I started. She walked toward the exit, but just before she reached the door, his mother spoke. Aaliyah. She turned. I'm ashamed, the older woman said through tears. I didn't know, but I should have seen something. Aaliyah nodded respectfully. Thank you for saying that. As she stepped outside, her phone buzzed. A new message from an unknown number. We need to talk. He lied to me, too. Aaliyah's breath caught because she knew there was another woman. And this story was far from over. If this story is resonating with you, take a moment to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share it with someone who believes truth always finds its way out. Where are you watching from right now? Drop it in the comments. And tell us, if you were in her place, would you stop here, or would you keep pulling the thread until every lie unraveled? Aaliyah sat alone in her car long after the building disappeared behind her. The steering wheel felt cold under her hands. Her heart was beating fast, but not from fear, from awareness. For years, she had lived in confusion. Tonight, clarity had arrived, and it was heavier than she imagined. Her phone buzzed again. "We need to talk. He lied to me too." She stared at the message. Another woman. So it was bigger than Vanessa. Bigger than one secret life. She typed slowly. "Who is this?" The reply came almost instantly. "My name is Renee. I just found out about you tonight." Aaliyah closed her eyes. "How many?" she whispered to herself. She drove home in silence, replaying the night in her mind. Marcus's face, his fear, the way control slipped from his hands like sand. When she reached the house, she didn't turn on the lights. She sat on the couch in the dark, letting the quiet settle. Her phone rang. It was her lawyer. "You did the right thing," he said. "But be prepared. He's going to fight." "I know," Aaliyah replied. "He always does." After the call ended, she finally responded to Renee. "Where did you meet him?" "At church," Renee replied. Aaliyah's chest tightened. Marcus had always insisted on attending a different service when he traveled. "How long?" Aaliyah asked. 3 years. 3 years. Aaliyah felt the last piece of denial fall away. She wasn't married to a careless man. She was married to a strategist. They agreed to meet the next afternoon at a small cafe in Decatur. Neutral ground, public, quiet. When Aaliyah arrived, Renee was already there, nervously stirring her drink. She looked up, eyes red, face tired. "You're not what I imagined," Renee said softly. Aaliyah sat down across from her. "Neither are you." There was a long pause. "He told me his wife was emotionally unstable," Renee said, "that she refused to let go." Aaliyah nodded. "He told Vanessa I cheated." Renee laughed bitterly. "He told me you didn't exist anymore." Silence filled the space between them. "He proposed to me last year," Renee continued, "but he said we had to wait." Aaliyah exhaled slowly. He was buying time. Renee looked up sharply. "For what?" "For escape," Aaliyah replied. "And profit." Renee leaned forward. "He used my savings." Aaliyah's eyes narrowed. "How?" "He convinced me to invest in a startup. Said it was temporary." Aaliyah's stomach dropped. The pattern was clear now. He wasn't just dividing love. He was harvesting trust. That night, Aaliyah returned home and opened a folder she had avoided for weeks. Old emails, old bank notifications, old excuses, everything lined up. She realized something chilling. Marcus never planned to choose one woman. He planned to rotate them, whichever served his needs at the time. That realization didn't break her. It hardened her. The next morning, Marcus showed up unannounced. She opened the door without surprise. "You humiliated me," he said immediately. She stepped aside, letting him enter. "You humiliated yourself," she replied. He paced the living room like a trapped animal. "Do you know what you've done? My accounts are frozen. Investors are pulling out." She sat calmly. Consequences tend to follow truth. "You think these women will side with you?" he snapped. "They'll turn on you." Aaliyah stood. "They already turned on you." Marcus stopped pacing. "What?" She met his eyes. "You're not dealing with one woman anymore." His face hardened. "You're making a mistake." "No," she said. "I'm correcting one." He stepped closer. "Drop the charges. We can settle." She shook her head. "You taught me something valuable. Never negotiate with someone who lies for a living." Marcus's phone rang. He glanced at the screen. His expression changed. "What?" Aaliyah asked calmly. He said nothing, just stared at the phone. Then it rang again, and again. Aaliyah smiled faintly. That would be them, she said, comparing stories. Marcus backed away slowly. For the first time since she met him, he looked small. As he left, Aaliyah locked the door behind him. She leaned against it, breathing deeply. This wasn't revenge. This was reclamation. And it had only just begun. Because what Marcus didn't know yet was that the women he lied to were about to become the strongest witnesses against him. And once that happened, there would be no hiding left. Aaliyah woke up the next morning with a strange feeling. Not fear, not sadness, clarity. For the first time in years, her mind felt quiet. The storm inside her had settled into something sharper. Focus. Her phone buzzed before she even left the bed. It was Renee. I spoke to Vanessa last night. Aaliyah sat up slowly. How did that go? She typed. There was a pause before the reply came. We cried. Then we compared notes. Aaliyah closed her eyes. That was it. The circle was closing. By noon, the three women were on a group call. No shouting. No insults. Just truth. Vanessa spoke first. He told each of us a different version of the same story. Renee nodded and used each of us for something different. Vanessa exhaled sharply. I feel sick. Aaliyah listened more than she spoke. She had already cried her tears. What remained was resolve. I've already filed, Aaliyah said carefully, but this goes beyond me. Renee hesitated. You think we should go to the authorities together? Aaliyah answered honestly. I think he's been doing this longer than we know. Silence followed. Then Vanessa said quietly, I found messages from 5 years ago. Another woman. He ghosted her after taking money. Renee covered her mouth. Aaliyah felt her spine straighten. He's a pattern, she said. Not a mistake. That afternoon, Marcus's lawyer called. He's requesting mediation. The man said. He's willing to offer a financial settlement. Aaliyah laughed softly. He's not sorry. He's scared. Still, the lawyer pressed, this could end quietly. Aaliyah's voice hardened. Quiet is what allowed this to grow. She declined. That evening, Marcus tried another approach. He showed up again. This time, he looked different. No confidence. No sharp words. Just desperation. I'm losing everything, he said as soon as she opened the door. Aaliyah didn't invite him in. You built everything on lies, she replied. Lies collapse. I loved you, he said quickly. Aaliyah studied his face. You love what I provided, she said. Stability, cover, silence. He flinched. I made mistakes, he whispered. She shook her head. Mistakes are accidents. You planned. He stepped closer. If this goes public, I'm finished. Aaliyah held the doorframe firmly. You finish women without blinking. Marcus's voice cracked. What do you want? Aaliyah looked him straight in the eye. I want the truth recorded, she said. In court, in writing, everywhere it matters. He stared at her. You won't stop, he realized. No, she said. I won't. That night, Aaliyah received another message. This time from a woman named Denise. I saw your name in a document by accident. I think we share the same husband. Aaliyah's chest tightened. She replied slowly. You're not alone. The next day, Denise sent screenshots. Old messages. Promises. Excuses. Same script. Different woman. By the end of the week, 5 women were connected. 5 different cities. Different stories. Same man. They met in person for the first time on a Saturday afternoon. No cameras. No noise. Just women sitting in a circle, holding pain that had finally found language. He told me I was crazy, one said. He said I imagined things. Another added. He said God would punish me if I questioned him. Denise whispered. Aaliyah listened, her hands clenched tightly in her lap. This isn't about revenge, she said finally. This is about stopping him. They all nodded, because for the first time, they understood something powerful. Marcus had always counted on silence, and silence was gone. That night, Aaliyah stood alone in her kitchen, staring at the window. Her phone buzzed again. A message from Marcus. You're enjoying destroying me. She typed back one sentence. I'm enjoying telling the truth. Seconds later, her phone rang. Unknown number. She answered. Aaliyah, a male voice said, This is Detective Harris. We need to speak with you regarding Marcus Hill. Her breath caught. Yes, she replied calmly. I've been expecting your call. Because what Marcus still didn't understand was that lies don't just break hearts. They leave trails. And someone had finally decided to follow them. Detective Harris met Aaliyah 2 days later, not at the police station. At a quiet office downtown, away from flashing lights and gossip, the kind of place where serious things were handled carefully. He was calm, middle-aged, no judgment in his eyes. Thank you for coming, he said, sliding a recorder onto the table. This conversation is voluntary. Aaliyah nodded. I understand. He leaned back slightly. We've been tracking Marcus Hill for a while. Financial irregularities, false identities. But we needed something stronger. She didn't flinch. You needed patterns. Yes, he said, and witnesses. Aaliyah took a slow breath. You have them now. For the next 2 hours, she told her story from the beginning, not with emotion, with precision, dates, places, amounts, promises. Detective Harris listened without interruption. When she finished, he closed his notebook slowly. You weren't just deceived, he said. You were used as infrastructure. Aaliyah nodded. That's what it felt like. He slid a folder across the table. You're not the first wife. Her fingers froze. What? Legally, he continued. He married another woman 8 years ago. She disappeared from records after bankruptcy. Aaliyah felt the air leave her lungs. So I wasn't even his first marriage? No, Detective Harris said quietly. You were the second, possibly the third. A cold understanding spread through her. He hadn't just lied. He had rehearsed. Outside, Aaliyah sat in her car again, staring forward. The city moved around her, but she felt still. Her phone buzzed. Vanessa. They contacted me too. Renee followed. Me as well. Aaliyah typed back one word. Good. That evening, Marcus's name appeared everywhere. Accounts frozen. Travel restricted. Business partners pulling out. He called nonstop. She didn't answer. Instead, she went through her home with new eyes. The photos on the wall. The clothes in the closet. The bed they shared. She realized something painful. Most of her marriage had been a stage. He had performed. She had believed. She packed a single suitcase. Not to run. To breathe. At a small hotel across town. She slept deeply for the first time in years. The next morning, she woke to a knock. It was her sister. I heard, her sister said softly, pulling her into a hug. Everything. Aaliyah held on longer than usual. I feel foolish. Her sister shook her head. You trusted. That's not foolish. They sat together quietly. Then her sister said something that stayed with her. He didn't outsmart you. He delayed you. Aaliyah smiled faintly. But not anymore. Later that day, Detective Harris called again. We're moving forward, he said. But there's something you should know. Her chest tightened. What? He's trying to flip the narrative. How? He's claiming emotional distress, saying you're unstable. Aaliyah laughed softly. Of course he is. He's also suggesting reconciliation, the detective added, as proof of good faith. Aaliyah's smile disappeared. No, she said firmly. That will never happen. That's what I hoped you'd say, Harris replied, because the next move is his arrest. Her heart skipped. When? Soon, he said. But once it happens, everything becomes public. Aaliyah closed her eyes. Public meant judgment. Questions. Headlines. But it also meant freedom. That night, Marcus finally reached her through an unknown number. I know you're behind this, he said, his voice shaking. Please, just talk to me. She listened silently. I made mistakes, he continued, but this is going too far. She spoke calmly. You went too far years ago. If you stop now, he begged, We can fix this. Aaliyah ended the call. She looked at her reflection in the mirror. She no longer saw confusion. She saw a woman who had survived deception and chosen truth anyway. And deep down, she knew the moment Marcus lost control was the moment his lives began to collapse completely. And the next chapter of this story would change everything. The arrest happened on a Tuesday morning. Not dramatic, not loud, just final. Marcus was stepping out of a parking garage when two unmarked cars blocked his path. He barely had time to look around before hands were on his arms and his phone slipped from his grip, clattering onto the concrete. People watched. Some whispered. Some recorded. For years, Marcus had controlled the narrative. Now, he didn't get to speak at all. Aaliyah found out while sitting on the edge of the hotel bed, tying her shoes. Her phone buzzed with a single message from Detective Harris. He's in custody. She closed her eyes. She didn't smile. She didn't cry. She exhaled. The kind of breath someone takes after holding it for too long. By afternoon, the news had spread. Not headlines yet, but murmurs. Industry emails. Quiet calls. People who once praised Marcus suddenly claimed they never trusted him. Aaliyah watched it all from a distance. For the first time, it wasn't her job to explain anything. Vanessa called that evening. They questioned me for 4 hours, she said, her voice exhausted. I told them everything. Renee texted next. I gave them bank records. He used my account as a pass-through. Denise followed. I'm scared but relieved. Aaliyah replied to each one calmly, steadily. You're doing the right thing. That night, Aaliyah returned home for the first time since leaving. The house felt different, smaller, like a place that had finally stopped pretending. She walked through each room slowly. In the bedroom, she opened Marcus's closet. Half of it was empty. She realized something then. He had already been preparing to leave. She sat on the bed and allowed herself one quiet moment of grief, not for him, but for the woman she used to be. The one who tried harder when things felt wrong. The one who blamed herself for his absence. That woman deserved rest. The next morning, Marcus's lawyer called again. This situation has escalated, he said. He wants to make a statement. Aaliyah's voice was calm. He's had years to speak. He's requesting to see you. She paused. No. If you don't, the lawyer warned, he may attempt to discredit you publicly. Aaliyah didn't hesitate. Let him try. Because the truth was no longer fragile. It was documented. That afternoon, Aaliyah met Detective Harris again. He's cooperating, Harris said, but only partially. What does that mean? Aaliyah asked. He's naming other people, claiming he was pressured. Aaliyah shook her head. He always blamed someone else. Harris studied her. You're handling this well. She answered honestly. I already survived the hardest part. What was that? Realizing the man I loved never existed. Outside the building, Aaliyah paused before getting into her car. A reporter called her name. Aaliyah, do you have a statement? She turned slowly. Yes, she said. I was never the side chick because I was weak. I was the side chick because I trusted the wrong person. Then she got into her car and drove away. That evening, as the sun dipped low, her phone buzzed with one last message from an unknown number. He didn't tell you everything. Aaliyah stared at the screen because she knew what that meant. The lies were done, but the consequences were still unfolding. And whatever Marcus had been hiding deeper was about to come to the surface. The message stayed on Aaliyah's screen long after the phone went dark. He didn't tell you everything. Her heart didn't race. It sank, because after everything she had learned, she knew one thing for sure. Marcus never told everything. She typed carefully. Who is this? The reply came minutes later. Someone who almost didn't survive him. Aaliyah's fingers tightened around the phone. What do you mean? This time, the response took longer. When it finally came, it was only one sentence. Meet me, and I'll explain why this is bigger than money. They agreed on a public place. A busy library cafe near downtown. Cameras, people, safety. When Aaliyah arrived, the woman was already seated in the corner. She looked older than Aaliyah expected. tired eyes, hands that trembled slightly as she lifted her cup. "My name is Clara," the woman said quietly. "I was married to Marcus before you." Aaliyah felt the world tilt. "Before me?" she asked. Clara nodded. "Legally, for 4 years." Detective Harris's words echoed in Aaliyah's mind. "You're not the first wife." "I disappeared," Clara continued. "Not because I wanted to. Because I had no choice." Aaliyah leaned forward. "What did he do to you?" Clara swallowed hard. "He destroyed my credit. Took loans in my name. Isolated me from my family." Aaliyah's chest tightened. "And when I tried to leave," Clara said, her voice barely steady, "he threatened me." "Threatened how?" Aaliyah asked softly. "He said if I expose him, he'd make sure I never recovered financially or emotionally." And I believed him. Aaliyah nodded slowly. "He did that to me too. Just quieter." Clara laughed bitterly. "He always refined his methods." They sat in silence for a moment. Then Clara reached into her bag and pulled out a worn envelope. "I kept these," she said, "in case someone ever needed proof." Inside were letters, handwritten, apologies, promises, and one note that made Aaliyah's breath catch. "If you ever leave me, I will ruin you before I let you go free." Aaliyah closed her eyes. "This isn't just fraud," she said. "This is control." Clara nodded. "That's why I left quietly. Changed my name. Started over." Aaliyah looked at her. "Why come forward now?" Clara met her gaze. "Because you didn't stay quiet. And because there may be others who still are." That night, Aaliyah forwarded everything to Detective Harris. His reply came an hour later. "This changes the case." The next morning, the charges expanded. Not just financial crimes. Psychological coercion, pattern manipulation, long-term deception. Marcus's attempt to cooperate collapsed overnight. By afternoon, his lawyer withdrew. Aaliyah sat in her living room, staring at the wall, when her phone rang again. This time it was Marcus. She almost didn't answer. Almost. "What now?" she asked calmly. His voice sounded thinner, smaller. "They're painting me like a monster." Aaliyah said nothing. "I didn't hurt anyone," he insisted. "I just made bad choices." She finally spoke. "You build a life on breaking women slowly." Silence. "They found Clara," he said quietly. "Yes," Aaliyah replied. "And she survived you." His voice cracked. "You didn't have to go this far." Aaliyah stood up. "I went exactly as far as the truth took me." He whispered, "I loved you." Aaliyah closed her eyes. "No," she said gently. "You love control." She ended the call. Outside, the sky darkened with incoming rain. Aaliyah stood by the window and realized something powerful. She had spent years trying to understand Marcus. Now she understood herself. And she knew the hardest part wasn't exposing him. It was watching who he would try to take down with him. Because when a man like Marcus falls, he doesn't fall alone. And the next truth waiting to surface would test everyone involved. The courtroom smelled like old wood and quiet tension. Aaliyah sat in the second row, hands folded in her lap, eyes forward. She wasn't there to perform strength. She was there to witness truth. Marcus sat at the defense table, shoulders slumped, hair unkempt. The man who once walked into rooms like he owned them now avoided eye contact with everyone, including her. When the judge entered, the room rose. The case was no longer private. It was official. The prosecutor stood first. "This is not a story about infidelity," she said. "It is a story about exploitation disguised as love." Aaliyah's jaw tightened. The prosecutor continued, laying out the timeline. Multiple marriages, overlapping relationships, financial misuse, psychological manipulation. Then came the witnesses. Vanessa testified first. Her voice shook at the beginning, then steadied. She spoke of holidays alone, promises postponed, money invested in dreams that weren't real. "I thought I was building a future," she said. "I was building his escape." Renee followed. She spoke about guilt, about believing she was helping someone she loved. "I didn't know I was funding a lie," she said, "until I became disposable." Denise's testimony was short but sharp. He told me doubt was disloyalty, she said. So I learned to ignore my instincts. Then Clara took the stand. The courtroom fell silent. I didn't come forward before because I was afraid, she said. But silence only made him stronger. She read the letter out loud, the one Aaliyah had already memorized. Marcus stared at the table. When it was Aaliyah's turn, she walked to the stand slowly. She raised her hand, took the oath, and told the truth, not with anger, with clarity. I was a side chick in my own marriage, she said. Not because I wanted to be, but because I was kept in the dark. The courtroom shifted. I blamed myself, she continued, until I realized confusion is often manufactured. Marcus's attorney tried to interrupt. The judge raised a hand. Let her finish. Aaliyah looked at Marcus for the first time in weeks. You didn't just lie, she said. You structure my reality around your convenience. The judge nodded thoughtfully. After hours of testimony, the defense finally stood. Marcus's attorney painted him as flawed, pressured, overwhelmed. Then Marcus stood. I never meant to hurt anyone, he said, voice cracking. I just didn't know how to stop. Aaliyah didn't react, because she knew something he didn't. The prosecutor stood again. Your Honor, she said, we would like to submit new evidence. Marcus stiffened. The judge leaned forward. Proceed. The prosecutor displayed a series of messages on the screen. Marcus's voice filled the courtroom again. Recordings, plans, strategies, timelines. The room buzzed. Marcus turned toward his attorney. You said that was gone. The judge struck the gavel. Order. Aaliyah's heart pounded, not with fear, but with certainty. The judge recessed the court. As people began to leave, a court officer approached Aaliyah. You should know, he said quietly. There may be additional charges coming. She nodded. I expected that. Outside, reporters gathered again. Aaliyah, one called, Do you feel vindicated? She paused. No, she said. I feel awake. As she walked away, her phone buzzed. A message from Detective Harris. He's talking now. Her steps slowed. Because when men like Marcus talk, they don't just confess. They expose others. And whatever he was about to reveal next would change the story in ways no one was prepared for. Marcus talked. Not because he wanted to be honest. Because he was cornered. Aaliyah learned this late, that night when Detective Harris called. They moved him to a different holding area, Harris said. He asked for a deal. Aaliyah sat on the edge of her bed. Phone pressed her ear. And he's giving names, Harris replied. Business partners. Shell accounts. People who help clean money. Aaliyah closed her eyes. So it really was bigger than him. Yes, Harris said. But there's something else. Her stomach tightened. What? He's saying he learned this behavior. Aaliyah's voice was steady. From who? From his father. The silence that followed was heavy. My father? Aaliyah repeated quietly. No, Harris clarified. His... Aaliyah exhaled slowly. He says he watched his father run 2 families in different states. Harris continued. Same tricks. Same lies. Same control. Aaliyah felt a strange mix of anger and sadness. So this was normal to him. Yes, Harris said. But knowing where it came from doesn't excuse it. No, Aaliyah agreed. It explains the pattern, not the damage. The next morning, Aaliyah returned to the courthouse. Not for testimony. For closure. Marcus was brought in, hands cuffed, eyes hollow. When he saw her, something flickered across his face. Regret. Fear. Maybe both. Why are you here? He asked quietly as they crossed paths in the hallway. She stopped. Because I wanted to see the end of the lie, she replied. He swallowed. I never thought it would go this far. Aaliyah looked at him carefully. It went as far as it needed to. They stood there for a moment. Then he said something that surprised her. I didn't plan to hurt you. She nodded slowly. But you planned everything else. He had no answer. Later that day, the judge ruled that Marcus would remain in custody until sentencing. Additional charges were officially filed. The room buzzed with whispers as the gavel came down. This time, Aaliyah did feel something. Relief. Outside the courthouse, Vanessa waited for her. "I can't sleep," Vanessa admitted. "Every memory feels fake." Aaliyah nodded. "That part takes time." Renee joined them, then Denise. The women stood together, not bound by pain anymore, but by truth. "I used to feel ashamed," Denise said softly, "like I should have known better." Aaliyah looked at her. "Deception works because it hides, not because you're weak." Vanessa wiped her eyes. "What do we do now?" Aaliyah thought for a moment. "Now," she said, "we rebuild." That evening, Aaliyah returned home and opened her laptop. She deleted old emails, closed shared accounts, updated passwords. Each small action felt like reclaiming space. Her phone buzzed one last time that night. A message from an unknown number. "I heard what you did. Thank you. I was too afraid to speak." Aaliyah stared at the screen. She realized then that Marcus's story wasn't just about her. It was about how many people stayed silent because they were made to feel small. She typed back, "You're not alone." As she set the phone down, Aaliyah felt something shift inside her. The truth had taken everything from Marcus, but it had given something back to her, her voice. And she knew the next chapter of her life. And this story would not be about what was taken from her. It would be about what she chose to build next. The silence after the storm was louder than Aaliyah expected. Court dates slowed. Phone calls became fewer. News cycles moved on to the next scandal. And suddenly, the world seemed to forget what had nearly destroyed her. But Aaliyah didn't forget. She woke up each morning in a life that still carried echoes of Marcus. The house, the routines, the habits she had built around someone who was never fully there. Healing, she learned, was not dramatic. It was quiet. She began therapy, not because she felt broken, but because she wanted to understand why she stayed as long as she did. Her therapist asked one simple question that stayed with her. "When did you stop trusting yourself?" Aaliyah didn't answer right away. She thought about the first ignored instinct, the first excuse she accepted, the first time she blamed herself for his distance. "I stopped trusting myself when loving him became harder than doubting myself," she finally said. That truth hurt. Meanwhile, Marcus remained in custody. His cooperation continued, but it didn't soften the consequences. Each new revelation brought more victims forward, more financial trails, more damage uncovered. One afternoon, Aaliyah received an email from the court. She had been granted full financial restitution from the assets seized. She stared at the message, unmoved. Money couldn't give back time, but it could give back choice. She decided to move. Not far, just enough to breathe differently. She sold the house quietly, donated most of the furniture, kept only what felt honest. On her last night there, she stood in the empty living room and whispered goodbye, not to Marcus, but to the version of herself who waited for someone to become truthful. In her new apartment, sunlight poured through wide windows. It felt open, uncomplicated. Vanessa visited first. "I still get angry," Vanessa admitted as they sat on the floor, surrounded by unpacked boxes. "That's normal," Aaliyah replied. "Anger is part of grief." Renee came next, holding coffee and laughter that felt tentative but real. "I'm learning to forgive myself," she said. "That's harder than forgiving him." Denise sent a message later that night. "I finally told my sister everything." Aaliyah smiled softly. These women were not just survivors. They were becoming witnesses for themselves. Weeks later, Aaliyah received a letter, handwritten, from Marcus. She almost didn't open it. Almost. Inside, his words were careful, apologetic, structured. He wrote about childhood, about fear, about losing control. He ended with one sentence that made her pause. "I hope one day you can see me as more than my worst actions." Aaliyah folded the letter slowly. She didn't feel anger. She didn't feel pity. She felt clarity. She wrote no response. Because some chapters don't need replies. They need endings. That night, Aaliyah stood on her balcony, watching the city lights glow. She realized something important. Being the side chick in her marriage was never the truth of her life. It was a lie someone tried to place over it. And now, that lie no longer fit. She turned off the lights and went inside, ready for what came next. Because the story wasn't over yet. Not for Marcus. And not for her. The sentencing date arrived quietly. No crowds. No cameras waiting outside. Just wait. Aaliyah sat in the back row this time. Not because she wanted distance, but because she no longer needed the front seat. This chapter was not about confrontation. It was about consequence. Marcus was brought in wearing a plain uniform. He looked smaller than before, not physically, but emotionally, like someone who had finally run out of explanations. The judge spoke clearly. The charges were read one by one. The evidence summarized. The pattern confirmed. This court recognizes, the judge said, that the damage caused was not a single act, but repeated choice. Aaliyah listened without flinching. When the sentence was announced, the room went still. Ears. Not symbolic. Not light. Real time. Marcus closed his eyes. Aaliyah felt nothing explode inside her. No rush. No triumph. Only stillness. Outside the courtroom, Detective Harris stopped her. "You did something important," he said. "More than you know." She nodded politely. "I just told the truth." "That's usually enough," he replied. That afternoon, Aaliyah went somewhere unexpected. She visited her mother. They sat at the kitchen table like they had when Aaliyah was a child. Tea between them. Silence that felt safe. "I want to protect you," her mother said softly. "That's why I didn't ask too many questions before." Aaliyah reached for her hand. "I know." Her mother studied her face. "You're different." "I'm clearer," Aaliyah replied. Later that week, something surprising happened. A local community center reached out. They wanted Aaliyah to speak, not publicly, not on a stage, but privately, to a small group of women rebuilding their lives after deception and loss. She hesitated. Then she agreed. She didn't tell them her full story. She told them this: confusion is not love, and consistency is not control. The women listened closely. Some cried, some nodded, some looked relieved. Aaliyah realized then that her story was no longer hers alone. It was becoming a mirror for others. One evening, as she prepared dinner, her phone buzzed. A message from Vanessa. "I went on a date today." Aaliyah smiled. Another from Renee. "I opened my own account. Just mine." Denise sent a voice note. "I slept through the night. No dreams." Aaliyah stood quietly, absorbing it all. These were victories Marcus would never see. And that was fine. That night, she dreamed for the first time in months. Not about betrayal. About open roads. About choice. About peace. When she woke, she understood something deeply. The truth had not only exposed a man, it had returned women to themselves. And that was a kind of justice no sentence could measure. But there was still one final chapter left. Because freedom is not just leaving something behind. It is choosing what to walk toward next. Freedom felt unfamiliar at first. Not scary. Just new. Aaliyah noticed it in small moments. Standing in a grocery aisle without checking her phone. Making decisions without explaining them to anyone. Laughing, real laughter, without feeling guilty afterward. She realized how much of her life had been lived in response to Marcus. Now there was space. One morning, an email arrived from a nonprofit organization that supported women affected by financial and emotional deception. They had heard about her case through a counselor at the community center. They wanted her help, not as a spokesperson, not as a symbol, as a guide. Aaliyah sat with the email open for a long time. She wasn't sure she wanted to step back into other people's pain. She had just learned how to breathe again. But then she remembered something Denise had said weeks earlier. "I thought I was the only one, until I heard you." Aaliyah typed a response slowly. "I'm willing to help." Quietly. The work was not glamorous. It was listening, reviewing documents, helping women recognize patterns before they blamed themselves. Sometimes she sat across from someone who sounded just like her old self. "He says I'm overthinking," a woman once whispered. That I'm too emotional. Aaliyah met her eyes gently. Did he say that after you asked a reasonable question? The woman nodded, tears filling her eyes. That was how it always began. Aaliyah didn't tell them what to do. She reminded them what they already knew. Months passed. Marcus faded into the background of her life. Not erased, but no longer central. His name appeared occasionally in legal updates. Appeals denied. Time passing. One afternoon, Aaliyah received a letter from the court confirming that the final restitution payment had been completed. She folded it neatly and placed it in a drawer, not as a trophy, as a closing file. That evening, she met Vanessa for dinner. Vanessa looked different, lighter. I cut my hair, she said with a small smile. Felt like starting over. Aaliyah nodded. It suits you. Vanessa hesitated, then said, I used to think you were the reason my life fell apart. Aaliyah smiled sadly. I thought the same about you. They both laughed quietly. Renee joined them later, excited about a promotion she'd earned without asking anyone's permission. I used to think love meant sacrifice, Renee said. Now I think it means safety. Denise sent a picture that night. A sunrise. No caption. Aaliyah understood. Later, alone on her balcony, Aaliyah reflected on something important. Marcus had taken many things from her. Time, trust, illusions, but he had not taken her ability to grow beyond the damage. She thought back to the moment she stood in that lounge, exposing the truth. She hadn't known how the story would end. She only knew she couldn't keep living inside a lie. Now, standing in her own life, she felt grounded, whole, not because everything was perfect, but because nothing was hidden. And for the first time in years, she looked forward to the future, not with hope built on promises, but with confidence built on truth. One last email arrived before she went inside, from a woman she had never met. I left today. I just wanted you to know, it was your story that helped me see clearly. Aaliyah closed her eyes. This was the ripple, and the ripple was still moving. One chapter remained, not about Marcus, not about betrayal, but about what happens when a woman chooses herself, fully, finally, and without apology. The invitation arrived without drama. No gold letters, no formal language, just a simple email. Aaliyah, would you consider leading a small workshop on rebuilding trust after deception? She read it twice. Months ago, the idea would have frightened her. Standing in front of strangers, speaking from wounds that once bled quietly. Now it felt different. Not heavy, honest. She accepted. The workshop was held in a modest room with wide windows and folding chairs arranged in a loose circle. 12 women attended. Different ages, different stories, same tired eyes. Aaliyah didn't stand at the front. She sat with them. I won't tell you how to heal, she said calmly. I'll just tell you what helped me stop shrinking. The room was silent. I stopped explaining my pain to people who benefited from my silence. A woman near the window covered her mouth. Another nodded slowly. They spoke one by one. Some voices shook. Some were angry. Some were numb. One woman whispered, "What if I never trust again?" Aaliyah answered gently, "Trust isn't something you give away. It's something you build, brick by brick, starting with yourself." When the workshop ended, no one rushed to leave. They lingered, talked, exchanged numbers. Aaliyah watched it happen with quiet gratitude. This was not fame. This was impact. That night, she walked home under a sky heavy with clouds, thinking about how far she had come. She remembered the version of herself who once waited for Marcus to choose her fully. She no longer felt angry at that woman. She felt protective. At home, she poured herself a glass of water and sat on the couch, letting the quiet wrap around her. Her phone buzzed. A message from Detective Harris. Final update. No more appeals. Sentence stands. Aaliyah read it once. Then she deleted the message. Not out of anger. Out of closure. Later, her sister called. "I'm proud of you," she said. "Not because of what happened, but because of who you became after." Aaliyah smiled softly. "Me too." The next morning, Aaliyah did something she had postponed for years. She wrote, not emails, not statements. A journal. She wrote about the early days, the small doubts, the moments she ignored herself. Then she wrote about the turning point, the envelope, the room full of silence, the moment truth stood up and spoke. She didn't write Marcus's name often. She didn't need to, because the story was no longer centered on him. By afternoon, she closed the journal and placed it on the shelf. Finished. As evening fell, Aaliyah received a final letter forwarded by her attorney. Marcus's handwriting. Short, careful. I see now that control is not love. I hope one day you find happiness beyond what I broke. Aaliyah read it once. Then she placed it in the drawer with the others, not to revisit, but to remember how far she had moved beyond it. She stood by the window, watching the city lights turn on one by one. She realized something quietly powerful. Healing didn't arrive the day Marcus fell. It arrived the day she stopped asking why he hurt her and started asking how she would live next. And tomorrow, she would take the final step, not away from him, toward herself.